Right. Hello, let's talk about the news. The thing you watch on TV while trying to figure out if that stain on your couch is chocolate or something more sinister. We like to think of the news as a reliable, dispassionate narrator of world events, a sort of global town crier shouting, "Hear ye, a thing has happened and here are the objective facts about it." It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That there are serious people in serious suits presenting a balanced view of our complicated world. It makes us feel informed, like we've done our civic duty just by absorbing the headlines before switching over to a show about competitive cheese rolling. But here's the thing, that idea is, to put it mildly, complete and utter bullshit. Corporate media isn't some benevolent public service, it's a business. A massive, globe-spanning, profit-driven business. Its primary goal isn't necessarily to inform you, it's to keep you watching through the commercial breaks. They need your eyeballs on the screen so they can sell those eyeballs to advertisers who want you to buy the right kind of yogurt. This conflict shapes everything, from what stories get covered to how they are framed. Think of it like a magician's act. Right hand, a sparkly bird doing a little dance so you don't notice what their left hand is doing, which is, nonchalantly setting up the entire trick. Okay, deep breath, let's talk about Gaza. The situation is a humanitarian catastrophe. A densely populated strip of land, often described as an open-air prison. Millions of people live there, half of them children, subjected to a years-long blockade, and repeated devastating military assaults. As of today, August 26, 2025, the death toll is staggering. Infrastructure is decimated. Famine is a terrifyingly real prospect. Amid this horror, a word has been used by UN experts, by human rights organizations, and in a case before the International Court of Justice, that word is genocide. This isn't a word to use lightly, it has a specific legal definition under international law, involving acts with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national group, an ethnical group, a racial group, a religious group. The accusations point to the scale of killing and the destruction of civilian life. Let's play a little game. It's called Spot the Agency. When you read a headline about the conflict, pay close attention to who is doing what. For instance, an Israeli airstrike hits a refugee camp. The headline often reads, "Dozens die in Gaza blast. Clashes in Gaza led to deaths." Notice the passive voice? A blast just happened. Like a mysterious act of nature. People just died, as if they tripped over their own feet. The actor, the one who dropped the bomb, is erased from the sentence. Grammar absolves the perpetrator before you read the first paragraph. Now contrast how actions by Palestinians are reported. You'll never see rockets materialize in Israel. Instead, Hamas fires rockets at Israeli town. The agent is named, the action is clear, the target is specified. This is a foundational difference. One side is shown as the active aggressor, the other as a passive victim that just happens. This goes beyond headlines. We see interviews with Israeli officials, military spokespeople, grieving Israeli families. Their pain is real and heard. But where's the airtime for Palestinian voices? A fleeting shot of a wailing mother in Gaza. An anonymous, dehumanizing image of grief. So, why does this happen? Why would large, reputable news organizations consistently adopt a narrative that minimizes the suffering of one group and obscures the actions of another? Is it because all the journalists are secretly in cahoots? No. It's usually not that cinematic. The real answer is much more boring and systemic. It boils down to two things that make the world go round. Money power. Let's start with the money. News corporations are corporations. They have shareholders to please and profit margins to maintain. A significant portion of their revenue comes from advertisers, massive multinational corporations. These companies have their own interests, political leanings and relationships with governments around the world. A news outlet running a story deeply critical of a key U.S. ally like Israel risks being seen as controversial. Controversial makes advertisers very, very nervous. They don't want their ads for soda or pickup trucks showing next to a segment that might alienate a huge chunk of the market. Then there's political power and access. National journalism relies on access to powerful people. Reporters need to get government officials on the phone. Networks need to book senators and generals for Sunday shows. If coverage is seen as deeply unfavorable, for example, platforming a genocide accusation seriously, that access can be threatened. Suddenly calls don't get returned, invitations to press briefings disappear. That creates an incentive to stay within acceptable bounds set by those in power. Alright, so we've established that advertisers and politicians have an outsized influence. But let's go one step higher up the food chain. Who actually owns the microphone? Who signs the checks for the people who decide what you see and hear every day? Increasingly, the answer is a tiny, shrinking club of incredibly wealthy individuals and massive conglomerates. Think about it. A handful of corporations, companies like Comcast, Disney, Paramount Global, own the vast majority of the TV networks, movie studios, and news websites that you consume. It's a staggering concentration of media power. This is a problem. It's a huge problem. When one person or one company owns a newspaper, a TV station, and a radio network, they have a terrifying amount of control over an entire region. This isn't a free market of ideas, it's an information oligarchy. The personal biases, political agendas, and business interests of a single billionaire owner can shape the editorial direction of dozens of outlets. If that owner, for example, has significant business investments that benefit from a particular U.S. foreign policy, Rupert Murdoch's News Corp has a long history of pushing a specific political agenda through its outlets, Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men on the planet, owns the Washington Post. The idea that the worldview and financial interests of a man whose company has billion-dollar contracts with the CIA and the Pentagon have zero influence is a little naive. The world is a mess, folks. And I don't know posting on YouTube about it will help, but that's the best I can do right now. Where were we? Right, the Washington Post. The very identity of the owner creates a framework, a set of unspoken rules about what is and isn't on the table. The concentration of ownership ensures that the perspectives we hear are overwhelmingly the perspectives of the very, very rich and powerful. The concerns of a billionaire who worries about capital gains taxes are fundamentally different from the concerns of a person worried about being able to afford rent. The result of all this, the corporate ownership, the advertiser pressure, the need for government access, is the creation of a massive echo chamber. It's not an echo chamber of the left or the right, but an echo chamber of the establishment. On any given cable news panel discussing the Middle East, you'll typically see the same cast of characters. You'll have a retired U.S. general, a former diplomat, and maybe a think tank analyst. A think tank, that is, if you look it up, funded by weapons manufacturers. What you almost never see is a Palestinian human rights lawyer, a UN special rapporteur, or an academic who has documented the occupation for decades. This careful curation of guests creates the illusion of a vibrant debate, while in reality, everyone on screen is operating within a very narrow, pre-approved spectrum of opinion. The debate isn't whether the U.S. should be sending billions in military aid to Israel, but how much aid should be sent. The discussion isn't whether the occupation is the root cause of the violence, but how the cycle of violence can be managed. The fundamental assumptions of U.S. foreign policy are never questioned, because the people invited on air are the very people who created and benefit from that policy. This process is incredibly effective at manufacturing consent. When viewers see the same message repeated across different channels by serious-looking experts, they assume it must be the truth. Any perspective outside this narrow window, for instance, the idea that Palestinians have a right to resist an illegal occupation, or that U.S. support for Israel is enabling war crimes, is automatically framed as radical, extreme, and not worthy of serious consideration. It's a silencing mechanism that works without any overt censorship. This is how narratives become entrenched. It's why so many people can, in good conscience, believe that this is a conflict between two equal sides rather than a decades-long military occupation. The media has failed to provide them with the context, the history, and the diversity of perspectives necessary to form a truly informed opinion. Breaking out of that chamber requires a conscious effort, because it is built to be comfortable and all-encompassing. So we come to the big question, the one that's been hanging over this entire discussion. When you turn on the news or scroll through your feed, are you getting the full story about Gaza? Are you being given the unvarnished truth about the accusations of genocide? Are you being given the unvarnished truth about the reality of the occupation? Are you being given the unvarnished truth about the scale of Palestinian suffering? After everything we've just discussed, the answer has to be a resounding, deafening, absolutely not. You are getting a story. You are getting a version of events. But it is a version that has been filtered, shaped, and sanitized for a very specific purpose. You are getting a story that is safe for advertisers, palatable to politicians, deferential to power. You are getting a narrative that uses passive language to obscure responsibility, a narrative that prioritizes the voices of the powerful over the powerless. It consistently dehumanizes one group of people while humanizing another. You are being shown a carefully managed magic trick. You are being told not to look at the man behind the curtain, the billionaire who owns the curtain, the stage, and the entire theater. This isn't journalism, it's public relations for an empire. The point of all this is not to make you feel hopeless. It's to encourage you, to implore you to be a more critical consumer of information, to ask questions. When you read a headline, ask, who is being erased? When you watch a panel, ask, who is not being invited to speak? When you see a report, ask, who benefits from me believing this version of events? Question everything. Seek out independent journalists. Listen to Palestinian voices directly. Read Amnesty, B'Tselem, and UN findings.